After completing my 10th class exams in 1979, my father suggested that I go and help my father's uncle and learns astrology. Mathematics being my favorite subject, I learned the calculations. My grandfather taught me how to calculate the inclinations of each planet and how to calculate the lagna and the meridian center MC, and he gave me some birth charts to draw. Thus, I learned how to draw the birth charts first and showed interest in predictions. So, my grandfather told me some predictions, some of the tips that he usually uses for predictions. And after learning those tips, I documented some of them. I verified with my father. While my father and my grandfather have laid the foundation for me to get interested in astrology, for almost a decade or 2 decades, I didn't show any interest. Welcome to Shastri Kara's astrological series. This is the presentation where I'm going to analyze the reasons why Mr. Trump was being defeated once and was successful twice, and in case if the US constitution allows him to become a presidential candidate in year 2028, who can defeat this person. From an astrological perspective, I'm analyzing it and I'm going to present it here in this presentation. On 5th November 2024, there was a US presidential election here in America, and it created a history. For the first time, it has elected a candidate who has ran for the third time, won the very first time, defeated the second time, and again won in the third time. This results has made me to I was curious, and I decided to analyze from an astrological perspective, to the best of my knowledge, astrological knowledge, what has happened for these events to occur. And what the first and the foremost thing that I did is, for a person, any person, to become a leader of a country, I found out that, based upon my astrological knowledge, that sun must be very strong, and sun, that strong sun, planet sun, should not have co-joined or been aspected by any malefic planet, whether it is a functional malefic or a natural malefic. And above all, it should not have any sort of a relationship with Saturn, its bitter enemy. And to add further, natal Rahu, for that person, for who that person who is going to be wants to become the leader of the country, for that person, natal position of natal Rahu is very, very important. Depending upon the position of natal Rahu in the person's chart, the events unexpected and unreliable events happen, so that will might result in making a chance for the person to become the president of the country, prime minister of a country, or not. So what I'm going to do here is, when the candidate's chart, whenever a candidate has decided to stand for an election as a president or a prime minister of a country, I overlap with the country's birth chart to see, is the country's birth chart compatible with the candidate's birth chart. And in this article, I'm going to emphasize exclusively the role of sun and how planet sun has helped uh, Mr. Trump to become the president again. As I mentioned earlier, the very first and the foremost thing that I do is look at the position of planet Sun in any country's birth chart. Here in the US United States birth chart, natal Sun is the 10th house lord. That means for a country, the 10th house means ruler or administration. So Sun is the 10th house lord. Sun is the most powerful planet, and it is staying in the 10th house. And natal sun is the lord, and natal sun is residing in the 8th house from its ascendant, from the ascendant Rashi Lagna, and it has co-joined with Jupiter, who is the 2nd and 5th house lords, Mars, who is the 1st and 6th house lords, and Venus, who is the 7th and 12th house lords. Here, this clearly tells you that any US citizen who has a strong natal sun at the time of his or her birth are having an high chances of winning a presidential election. Now let me go and look at the natal sun's position in Trump's birth chart. If you look at it, in Trump's birth chart, Sun is the 1st house lord and is residing in the 10th house. So the 1st house lord is residing in the 10th house is a very lucky position for a person to become the leader of a country or to become the leader. He was right from the beginning, he was a leader, like he owns a business and he's the one who owns it, and he's the what do you call, the CEO of that company, whatever the company, he owns it. Unfortunately, in the 10th house, along with the sun, the 1st house lord, Rahu is residing. So this tells you that the native's career will be like a sine wave. It goes ups and downs. Sometimes he reaches to the top of the career and all of a sudden falls down unexpectedly, or and again his career becomes unreliable, and all of a sudden again it rises up. That's exactly what has happened in his career until now. So this unexpected things is something that we have to keep in mind for any person. And then the natal moon, if you look at natal moon, it is getting a direct aspect from both natal sun and natal Rahu. Moon is the mind, so the native's mind is always thinks like a leader. And then the another important thing you have to see here is natal's Jupiter 9th aspect is on sun. Jupiter is the 8th house lord, that means secret dealings. So to maintain the leadership position, this native will always have some sort of a secret dealings, and so that is because Jupiter's 9th aspect is on natal sun. And also one more thing that we have to tell here for in his chart is the role of Saturn. At the time of his birth, Saturn was static. That means Saturn earlier, few days or few earlier, Saturn was in retrograde mode. To go into the forward mode, it has to slow down its energy, becomes a static. When it becomes static, it gains all the energy that it has it and then moves forward. And so any person who was born when Saturn is static is very strong, and that strong Saturn plays a vital role in this particular for this particular native too. And that's exactly what you have seen here. Number one, even though he's having Ardhastava Shani, for every other native, Ardhastava Shani is a pain, but for this particular native, it has done nothing because static Saturn is there. And the only disadvantage in this particular native's chart is Sun and Venus are in Rashi Sandhi. So while analyzing the people's chart like this, native's chart who has Rashi Sandhi, here also I'm analyzing Sun, assuming that initially the Sun is in the 10th position, 10th house. Analyze the chart and then assume the Sun is in the 11th house and then analyze the chart. The same way, assume Venus is in the 12th house co-joined with Saturn, analyze it the chart, and then assume Venus is co-joined with Mars in the 1st house, in the house owned by Sun, and analyze the chart. So people, natives who has crucial planets like this, particularly Lagna, 1st house lord, Lagnadipati. Particularly when Lagnadipati is in a Rasi Sandhi, while analyzing the native chart, we have to look at both the possibilities. Now let's do the overlapping of the country's chart with the native's chart. Like I said earlier, If any native wants to become the leader or a prime minister of a country, the very first thing is to overlap the native's chart on the country's chart and look for the compatibility. Here, if you see, in the natal sun is the first house lord and residing in the 10th house for Trump, and sun is the 10th house lord for USA. So this unique combination because is of something that is very important and very fortunate for the native to become the leader for a longer period. And just because natal Rahu is co-joined with natal sun in the Trump's chart, the tactics, leadership tactics are completely unpredictable. And also being in a Rasi Sandhi, we have to look for how the natal sun has co-joined with natal Mercury in his chart. And then when you look at it, exactly when you assume that sun is in the 11th house, then it co-joins with Mars, Venus, Sun and Jupiter of the United States birth chart. So natal sun of the USA will be co-joining with the natal sun of the native. That's another strong point. So irrespective of whether you take the sun in the 10th position or in the 11th position for the native, it is the when overlapping with the country's chart, it is the sun seems to be the most powerful combination here. In 2016, the very first time Mr. Trump stood as a presidential candidate, and that was against one of the most famous, well-known politician, Hillary Clinton, who was who was a first lady for United States. So all polls and pundits, political pundits, everybody predicted that Hillary Clinton will win the elections because she is famous, she is known for her public service, everybody knows it, and this person is completely new and have never been a politician, was a businessman all the times. And while everybody has predicted Hillary's election success, to their surprise, Mr. Trump won. First and the foremost thing I want to emphasize, like I already mentioned in the that how strong Trump's sun is in his natal position and how it was compatible with the country's chart. Another thing was that in United States birth chart in July 2016, starting July 2016, Rahu Mahadasa started. So whenever Rahu Mahadasa starts, a lot of unexpected events happens and unreliable situations are sure to pop up. And since natal Rahu was in the 10th house for Mr. Trump and it has co-joined with Sun, who is the first house lord, so I was sure that he will win and my prediction came true. Now let me go back and see Hillary Clinton's chart. Why did she get defeated? And the very first and the foremost thing, as I said earlier, in her chart, Sun is debilitated, is Nicha. Any time when Sun is Nicha, the chances of becoming the leader, that means you don't have any boss above you, that is called a leader, is impossible. That is the reason why you have seen in her chart, in her life, if you look at her career, on 99.99% of the time, all the time she reported to somebody. Like when she was the foreign secretary under Obama administration, she reported to the president. So that's how they end up with, whenever the sun is in Nicha, they are never become the leader. They always have somebody above them to report to. So that's one reason why I was confident that she will not win the election in 2016. Now, to add further, when you look at it, it's not only that Venus weak natal Saturn, it also co-joined with Venus and Mercury, and that's another good position because Venus is the first house lord. Unfortunately, that didn't work out for her. She can become the leader, but not as a leader, full-fledged leader. At the end she has to, at the end of the day, she has to report to somebody. And then if you look at who is the 10th house lord, the 10th house lord is Moon. And if you look at it, Moon is in the house owned by Saturn and Saturn is in the house owned by Moon. There is a Parivartana yoga there. That is another reason. And to add Saturn, Mars is also residing with co-joined with Saturn. That's another reason why she was not in a position where what she wants to become couldn't happen. That's the primary reason why, when you look at it, the stuff hasn't started done for her. The question comes now is, when Trump had such a strong sun and when it was compatible with the America's USA's birth chart, how did he get defeated in 2020 with when standing against Joe Biden? To answer that question, the very first thing is to look at Joe Biden's birth chart. What is the role of sun in his birth chart? When I looked at it in 2020, I did mention that it is a clash of titans. You never know who is going to win, because both of the birth chart, in both the competitors' birth chart, sun was extremely powerful. Now let's go and see how it is in Joe Biden's chart. In Joe Biden's chart, sun is the 10th house lord and residing in the first house. That's exactly what is needed for a person to defeat any like a person like Trump. To defeat a person like Trump, what the opponent should have is natal sun should be extremely strong, should be the 10th house lord in the first house or first house lord in the 10th house. For Trump, sun is the first house lord in the 10th house, and for Joe Biden, it is the 10th house lord in the first house. That's the reason I mentioned specifically that it is a clash of titans during in 2020. Now, when the another thing that you have to see, unfortunately for Joe Biden, not just one natal sun, natal Jupiter, and natal Venus, all the three are in Rashi Sandhi. That's the most disadvantage that the native had, and that was another reason why, even though his son is such a strong to win the election in 2020, it was not a cakewalk. There was a lot of struggle that happened, and so much of unpredictability came in, and finally Biden had a tough time to win the race. The primary reason was still the same. The sun is being the most powerful planet, and if you look on the day of election, that is on 3rd June November 2020, transit sun was as usual. In November every year, transit sun will be in Libra, that means debilitated. So no help for any candidate who is standing for the presidential election in United States will not get any help from the transit sun. So they have to solely rely on their natal sun strength, because it got debilitated dead. And then, but Jupiter transit Saturn's 10th aspect was on transit sun on that day. That's another reason why Mr. Biden had so much struggle to win the election. Remember, Saturn was static, natal Saturn was static for Trump, and that is another advantage for him. So to defeat a natal static natal Saturn in Trump's chart, the transit Saturn fortunately was in the 10th position, 10th aspect was on the sun. So even though Saturn has created so many hurdles for sun, because they both are bitter enemies, still sun being very strong for Joe Biden, he could win the election. Now let me go and look at the birth chart of Kamala Harris, who just got defeated in November 2024. Just like in 2016, even in 2024 also, all the polls and pundits have predicted that Kamala Harris will win the election. It would be a cakewalk, because Trump was convicted and contesting in a political arena for the first time as a convicted felony, and who also got defeated in the previous election. Now let me go and see what was the reason for her to get defeated. The very first thing that, as I said earlier, sun is debilitated. Natal sun in her birth chart is debilitated. That means the strength of the sun is no way good. And to my surprise, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets, 4 planets and Rahu. All of them are in Rasi Sandhi. When so many planets are in Rasi Sandhi, the chances for that particular person to become the leader is close to zero. So they will reach a highest position in their career, but at the end of the day, they have to report to someone above them. And that's exactly what has happened to her in her whole lifetime. Just like Hillary Clinton, she reached to the highest position, but at the end of the day, she had to report to someone above her. And that's what has happened to her too. And the other thing you have to see is when you look at the Rahu, the natal Rahu is in the first house, and that is making another unfortunate event for her to move up the career in a easy way. It's not a piece cake of cakewalk for her anymore to go up the ladder in her career, and her career history tells you that exactly if you go through it and Google it. And a lot of people, when I was going through the internet, when I analyzed it and said that the chances are minimal for her to win the election, a lot of people were in the internet were a little bit upset with my analysis. And one of the famous uh, astrologer did mention that because Kamala Harris has a Parivartana yoga between the moon and Mars. Moon is the second house lord, Mars is the fifth and 11th house lord. Everybody predicted that the debilitated sun negative impact will be overridden with this Parivartana yoga, which I was not confident about, because Moon is the second house lord, Mars is the fifth and 11th house lords, and to become the leader, you got to be the first or the 10th house lord. It's neither of them happened. Again, when you look at transits, Rahu on the day of election, just like for Hillary Clinton, even for Kamala Harris also, transit Rahu was exactly in the 10th house from Rashi Lagna. And 10th house, when Rahu, transit Rahu is in the 10th house, the results are always unpredictable or unexpected. And the for both Hillary and Kamala Harris, the expectation for winning a very high, everybody expected it that would be a big success and big win, and the result was completely turned to be 180 degrees wrong. So the same thing happened. Another reason why for both of them uh, they got defeated is not only the transit Rahu is in their 10th house. When during the both elections in 2016 and 2024, Rahu Mahadasa is running for the country, and Rahu Mahadasa for the country started in July 2016. So the importance of transit Rahu being in the 10th house shows that during the Rahu Mahadasa, whoever that person has, the results will be unexpected. That's exactly what happened here. The big question that came to my mind is like, if the constitution allows him to recontest in 2028 as a presidential candidate, from an astrological perspective, who can defeat this person? So the very first thing, based upon my analysis, is that first whoever is the opponent, in the opponent's chart, natal sun, natal Rahu, natal Jupiter, and natal Saturn, all the four are very very important. And natal sun must be the 10th house lord residing in the first house, or first house lord residing in the 10th house. And the next thing is natal Jupiter. Jupiter is a benefic planet, so a benefic planet should not get any negative impact. Then for that purpose, natal Jupiter must be in a benefic house, and natal Jupiter do not co-join with malefic planets or aspected by malefic planets. Another important thing is, if Jupiter there is any sort of a relationship between Jupiter and Saturn exists, whether it is co-joining or aspecting, then it results into disappointments and hurdles. So there should not be any relationship between Jupiter and Saturn for that particular native at the time of birth. And the most important thing is the unpredictable planet Rahu. Natal Rahu must not be in the 10th house at any point, and must not have any relationship with the 10th house or the 10th house lord. Once these are the four conditions that are very important in the native opponent's birth chart, and if these four conditions agree, if there is a birth chart that with these four conditions, that the chances for that particular native to stand as and like in 2020 have a clash of titans possible in 2028. And in November 2028, on the election day the elections was going to happen, I found out that transit Rahu must at any point, wherever transit Rahu is, at any point it should not have any relationship with natal sun, must not be in natal's the opponent's birth chart's first house or the 10th house from the ascendant. And another thing, so when these are the things that needs to happen, so that the possibility is like who a person who in which month was he born, is it possible. So to defeat Trump, the first thing is that the natal sun must be in Aries. That's where it get exalted. That means who were born in April, May or June, for those natives, the natal sun will be exalted in Aries. And if that particular native has an Aries as an ascendant, that means then the sun will be in the first house, and that is another advantage. But unfortunately Saturn will be the 10th house lord, so that means natal sun's bitter enemy Saturn is the 10th house lord. Just like Joe Biden had it, the native might win, but it won't be a cakewalk anymore. And another thing is natal Rahu and natal Saturn must not be in Libra, because in Libra Saturn gets exalted, and when exalted Saturn is there, being a 10th house lord and co-join with Rahu, that is the biggest drag for the person to become a leader. Hoping that we do find a person with these particular planetary positions. Once I find, I will in somewhere in 2027 I will go ahead and analyze the birth chart of that particular person's, whoever is his opponent, and then give my predictions as usual, the way I did it in 2016, 2020. Actually I started giving in 2012. I predicted that Obama will defeat Mitt Romney. It happened. 2016, I predicted that Trump will win. That happened. In 2020, I predicted that it's a clash of titans, and I did not give any. I myself doesn't know who might win, so I just kept quiet. In 2024, I predicted that Trump will win again, and it happened. So let me go hope that in 2027, when I see the other opponents' birth charts, I'll give my predictions. Finally, let me conclude that whatever the analysis that I did until now are all made using Vedic astrology principle that I learned from my father and grandfather, and I used them to the best of my knowledge. This analysis I'm exclusively is only to those people who are interested to learn astrology, or those who have already have some knowledge of astrology and would like to enhance their knowledge. This article is mentioned only for those people. And let me end with my disclaimer: all the predictions are based upon my astrological knowledge and to be used only for educational purposes only. Please do not use this information for anything other than learning astrology. Thank you very much for watching my video.